The rain was relentless, mirroring the storm inside me. Alaric, a 43-year-old software engineer in Seattle, stared out the window of our Queen Anne home, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. Something was off with Bronte, my wife of 15 years. It wasn't one big thing, but a collection of small shifts: the way she avoided my gaze, the late nights at the office, the hushed phone calls she'd abruptly end when I entered the room. We met in college, two bright-eyed dreamers with the world at our feet. Bronte, with her fiery red hair and infectious laugh, had captivated me instantly. She was an artist, a painter with a passion that burned as brightly as her hair. I was the steady one, the pragmatist, providing the stability that allowed her to chase her creative pursuits. We built a life together, a good life. Or so I thought. The first red flag was the password on her phone. Bronte had always been open, trusting. We never felt the need to hide anything from each other. But a few weeks ago, I noticed her frantically shielding her phone when I walked by. When I playfully asked about it, she brushed it off, saying it was for work security. But Bronte didn't work in a high-security environment. She painted landscapes and portraits in her small studio downtown. Then there were the late nights. Bronte claimed she was working on a large commission, a mural for a new coffee shop in Belltown. I understood the demands of her profession, the need to meet deadlines. But the frequency of these late nights was unusual. I would call her, and she would answer, her voice strained, the background filled with muffled sounds that didn't quite sound like a coffee shop. One evening, I decided to surprise her. I picked up her favorite takeout from a Thai place in Ballard and drove downtown to her studio. The lights were off. I tried the door, but it was locked. I called her, but she didn't answer. I waited for an hour, the rain soaking through my jacket, a growing unease settling in my bones. Finally, I gave up and drove home, the takeout growing cold on the passenger seat. Bronte arrived home around midnight, her cheeks flushed, her hair slightly disheveled. She gave me a perfunctory kiss and mumbled something about a difficult client before heading straight to bed. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a picture I didn't want to see. The final piece of the puzzle came unexpectedly. A few days later, I was doing laundry when I found a receipt in Bronte's jeans pocket. It was from a small boutique hotel in Kirkland. The date on the receipt was the same night she claimed to be working late at the coffee shop. My heart sank. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the core, that my worst fears were true. I confronted Bronte that evening. I didn't yell or scream. I simply laid the receipt on the table and asked her to explain. She paled, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. She stammered, denying everything, claiming the receipt must be a mistake. But I saw the truth in her eyes, the guilt that she couldn't hide. Finally, she broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed to having an affair with a man named Caspar, the owner of the coffee shop where she was painting the mural. She claimed it was just a fling, a moment of weakness. But her words rang hollow. The pain in my chest was unbearable, a crushing weight that stole my breath. I felt betrayed not just by Bronte, but by the life we had built together, the vows we had made. How could she do this to me? How could she risk everything for a fleeting moment of passion? Why? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why would you do this? Bronte sobbed, unable to meet my gaze. She mumbled something about feeling unfulfilled, about needing something more. But her excuses were meaningless. The damage was done. The trust was broken. I spent the next few weeks in a daze, going through the motions of life but feeling utterly numb. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I replayed our entire relationship in my head, searching for clues, for signs that I had missed. Had I been blind to her unhappiness? Had I failed her in some way? I confided in my best friend, Leopold, a divorce attorney. He listened patiently as I poured out my heart, offering practical advice and a shoulder to lean on. He urged me to focus on myself, to take care of my own well-being. He also recommended a private investigator. I know you don't want to believe it's this bad, Alaric, Leopold said, but you need to know the full extent of what's been going on. A pie can get you the evidence you need to protect yourself. I hesitated. The thought of delving deeper into Bronte's betrayal was sickening, but I knew Leopold was right. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The private investigator, a sharp woman named Beatrix, was efficient and discreet. Within a week, she had compiled a detailed report, complete with photos and videos. The evidence was damning. Bronte and Caspar were not just having an affair. They were deeply involved, spending weekends together, taking trips out of town. The report also revealed that Bronte had been using our joint account to pay for these excursions. I was devastated. The betrayal was even deeper than I had imagined. Bronte wasn't just having a fling, she was leading a double life funded by our shared resources. The anger that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted. I confronted Bronte again, this time armed with the Pie's report. She couldn't deny the evidence. She broke down, begging for forgiveness, promising to end the affair. But it was too late. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. "I want a divorce," I said, my voice cold and firm. "I want you out of my life." Bronte was shocked. She had clearly expected me to forgive her, to accept her back. But I wouldn't. I deserved better. The divorce was messy and acrimonious. Bronte fought me every step of the way, demanding a large share of our assets. She even tried to claim that I was emotionally abusive, hoping to gain an advantage in the proceedings. But I had the evidence to prove her lies. Beatrix's report was invaluable, exposing Bronte's deceit and protecting my interests. During the divorce proceedings, I discovered something even more shocking. Bronte was pregnant, and the baby wasn't mine. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Bronte had not only betrayed me with another man, but she was carrying his child. The thought of raising another man's baby, of being tied to Bronte and Caspar for the rest of my life, was unbearable. I felt a surge of rage, a primal urge to lash out, to make them pay for the pain they had inflicted on me. But I knew that revenge wouldn't bring me happiness. It wouldn't undo the damage that had been done. Instead, I decided to focus on myself, on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work, immersing myself in complex coding projects. I started exercising, running along the waterfront, feeling the burn in my muscles, the wind in my hair. I reconnected with old friends, spending weekends hiking in the Cascades, laughing and sharing stories. I also started seeing a therapist, someone who could help me process my emotions, to heal from the trauma of Bronte's betrayal. It was a long and difficult process, but slowly, gradually, I began to heal. I learned to forgive myself for not seeing the signs, for trusting Bronte so completely. As the divorce neared its end, I received a call from Beatrix. She had some additional information about Caspar that she thought I should know. "It turns out Caspar isn't as successful as he claims to be," Beatrix said. "The coffee shop is heavily in debt, and he's been using Bronte's money to keep it afloat." I wasn't surprised. Caspar had always struck me as a user, someone who was attracted to Bronte's talent and her financial security. "There's more," Beatrix continued. "Caspar is married. His wife found out about the affair and is divorcing him. She's also suing him for adultery and alienation of affection." I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Caspar was finally facing the consequences of his actions. His life was falling apart just like mine had, but I didn't revel in his misfortune. I had moved on. The divorce was finalized a few weeks later. Bronte received a modest settlement, far less than she had hoped for. She was left with nothing but a broken relationship and a child to raise on her own. I walked out of the courthouse a free man, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I was no longer Alaric, the betrayed husband. I was Alaric, the survivor. I had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I moved out of our Queen Anne home and bought a condo overlooking Puget Sound. I filled it with art, music, and laughter. I surrounded myself with people who loved and supported me. One evening, a few years after the divorce, I was at a gallery opening when I saw Bronte. She looked older, more tired. She was alone. She approached me hesitantly, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and shame. "Alaric," she said softly, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I know I hurt you deeply and I'll never forgive myself." I looked at her and I felt a pang of sadness. Not for her, but for the woman she used to be, the woman I had loved. "I forgive you, Bronte," I said. "But that doesn't change anything. We can never be together again." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know," she said. "I just wanted you to know that I regret everything." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I watched her go, feeling a sense of closure. The past was behind me. I was finally free to move on, to embrace the future with hope and optimism. I eventually found love again with a kind and compassionate woman named Gwyneth. She was everything Bronte wasn't: honest, loyal, and deeply committed to our relationship. We built a life together, a life based on trust, respect, and unconditional love. I learned a valuable lesson from my experience with Bronte: that betrayal can be a catalyst for growth, that heartbreak can lead to healing, and that even in the darkest of times, hope can prevail. And that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply moving on and creating a life filled with happiness and love. Years later, Leopold told me that Caspar's coffee shop had gone bankrupt and that he had moved away, leaving Bronte to raise their child alone. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, but I knew that she had made her choices, and she had to live with the consequences. My life, on the other hand, was filled with joy and purpose. I had a loving partner, a fulfilling career, and a sense of inner peace. I had survived the storm and emerged stronger than ever before. And that, I realized, was the ultimate victory. I think the best revenge I could have ever got was to forget her and be happy. I forgave her because I truly did not care about her or what happened to her anymore. All my love and energy were with my new love, and I was not going to waste any second on the shadows of the past. To the reader, if you find yourself in a similar situation, remember that you are not alone. Betrayal is a painful experience, but it doesn't have to define you. You have the strength to heal, to rebuild, and to create a life filled with happiness and love. Don't let the darkness consume you. Embrace the light and never give up on yourself.